Peace, family. This is your boy Juro. It is the evening of the 6th of April, 2023. How is everybody doing? So, it's the evening time here. And, one thing that I do from time to time is I look back over the content that I've put out on YouTube because as you already know my backstory, I've been on YouTube since October 18th, 2012. And a lot of people don't believe that. And I get it. Algorithm, I understand that. Um, Speaking about positive things, betterment, um, that doesn't move the algorithm. And I did want to be skeptical because I understand that fear based algorithm is more salacious, it gets more attention. But it is fleeting, it is temporary, it is something that is considered non digestible. Excuse me, my soup coolers are not working. So before I decided to open up my camera on my phone, I just I felt compelled to just go to my catalog and look through the years. And I've had countless, one of the expressions that um, I've always embraced was my hair because your hair is an extension of your spirit. And I was just going through my catalog because I have well over almost 1,400 videos that I've put out. And I just so happened, I said, I'm just going to scroll through and I'm going to stop and see what I was talking about. And just so happened, the video I stopped on was called Rebel Without a Pulse, The Battle for Your Identity. And I know a lot of you were like, 1,400 videos? Yeah, I've been on this part of my journey. I've been doing it for a long time. And my intent was always because I've always been a strong cheerleader for humanity. So one thing about me is when I get bored, I get experimental, and um, I've been blessed to have the ability to grow my hair. I've cut my hair countless times. Normally because of my uh, military service, I was required to have a certain look. And then I went through a rebellious phase where I cut my hair off. I just cut it off. And when my career came to a close, or basically when I took that blouse off for the last time, I was a commercial driver for like almost 4 years. I've always had a nomadic spirit. But the one thing that I was always drawn to was communicating, just communication with people. You just never know who you may come in contact with. So back in 2011, I my backstory, good guy, bad relationship, and I was determined to not repeat bad habits and bad behaviors. And that was one of the things that really caught my attention to turn within myself and embrace uh, my faith. And I like to call it my spirituality. Because as I've explained to many of you countless times, there's a difference between being religious as well as being spiritual, because when you break down the root word for religion, that means pattern. Like I said, I used the example of smoking cigarettes. That's a pattern. But when it comes to spirituality, the essence of spirit, but truly, when you define it, means connection. What are you connected to? So I know some of y'all was like, you say this, but I don't believe it. So what I'm going to do real quick, and I'm going to cut it off, I'm going to show you what I looked like 7 years ago. So I'm going to flip, and I'm just going to let it run just real briefly of what at that time this was Martin Luther King weekend, and I want to say this was 2015, maybe 2016. Yeah, 2016. But a lot of people didn't realize that I went through a phase where I had dreads. Yeah. So if you've never gone through my channel, but the irony is everything that is being discussed now in 2023, I've talked about this kind of prophetic, you know, and I say that from the most humble position I can muster within myself. So the remnants of what makes reality today, I was already proverbially sitting at the door looking at how society was impacting humanity. But real quick, I'm just going to show you what I looked like 7. So I'm gonna zoom in because a lot of people are like, what? But this was me 7 years ago. Of the Martin Luther King holiday. For some, I say to you, give yourself permission to rest. Give yourself permission to reflect. Do something that steps out of your norm but brings you to a higher level of who you really are. Maybe this is the weekend that you will take yourself out on a date. How about an emotional date where you allow yourself to actually start to heal? So right there, always had a position of supporting the best you. Now, I've always been a strong proponent that being that we are spiritual beings first, because before you had a physical form, you were spirit first. And before you had physical form, there was a agreement that you made with the Most High. And there are certain things of your life that you agreed to experience, as well as there were certain things you agreed to accomplish. Kind of like if you remember Miracle on 31st or 34th Street, and that the famous line, when you hear a bell, an angel gets his wings. Proverbially, it's kind of like that because we that's part of our journey. Not everybody will be able to fulfill what you agreed upon. That is why every human being is born with natural gifts and talents. Do you not find it ironic? But I would be remiss not to mention this to you. A lot of people want to start banging the fear gong in regards to the narrative of how society is going. And unfortunately, there's a lot of upheaval being promoted, as well as there's a lot of social dissension being And that, well, I'm trying to pick my words respectfully. Support it. But what if I told you? What if I told you that whatever makes your reality, whatever whatever your reality is, your day to day, whatever it is, if there was any setbacks, if there was any disappointments, if there was any fear, that no matter your efforts, still are found woven into your emotions, found connected to your behaviors. What if I told you you could change that? Think about it. You know why there's so much pushback on the word accountability? You know why? It's because words have power. They always have. And they know the moment that you unconditionally submit to yourself. That's why they use trigger words of, they say, oh, accountability and submission. They want to they want to they want to use that as a way to control you, to keep you at bay from truly investing in healing your life. What am I saying? Think of it this way. You gotta bear with me because I'm sitting in a director's chair. I have a director's chair in my garage. So you might hear the creaking in the background. You have some people, you know how you hear the term, they're so smart, they're stupid? You ever heard that term? That means, from a scholastic standpoint, they are brilliant, but they lack common sense. And unfortunately, there are those that have the same belief system about mankind, that they fear that as long as they enable the things that keep you from investing in yourself, because at the end of the day, it's about control. It's about economic supremacy. Think of it this way. You pick your platform that you tend to frequent. We can agree, as you've heard the term, you are what you eat, right? We can agree to that, right? Because you absorb what that source is. So, what if you look at it from, we'll take the narrative of the examples of social media, and it is nothing but, we'll say, uh, violence. We'll use acts of violence, right? As you consume it, indirectly you condone it, which will indirectly spark behavior, actions, or reactions, because you're becoming desensitized. So, imagine this. Imagine your focus was, we'll say, you decided to fall back from social media, right? And you say, well, you know what? I'm going to start investing my time in, say, reading novels. Whatever you consume will have an impact on how you rationalize your environment. It will be a indirect influence. Maybe because it expands your thought process, it enhances your vocabulary, and may possibly spark you trying something new because it's exposing you to a new behavior. But what is a behavior? Behavior is a routine. You got to mind. You may hear that noise in the background. Somebody's celebrating, and usually on Fridays, um, there's always fireworks going off here because, especially in the Asian community, and it is also in the Pacific Island community. That's one of the ways they acknowledge a significant milestone. So it may be a birthday, a marriage, yada, yada, yada. They pop in a fireworks. So you may hear that in the background. Wasn't expecting that. But to go back to what I was saying, that investment requires time, consistency, effort, and the more you invest in it, the more you will expand your intellect. No different than taking a seed, planting it in soil, fresh soil, giving it the nutriment for the plant, the roots to latch, and then eventually break through the soil to grow into a flower. It's the same thing with your brain. We only use 6%. Hold that thought. Okay. So I can be mindful on time. So I've always had this, I was always aware about watching social constructs indirectly as far as I was a child to throughout the influences of my teenage years, my young adulthood, and eventually development as a young man into becoming a man. And I saw certain narratives play out. And I could never understand why is it, no matter how society, whatever the influence was, usually 9 times out of 10, it was always negative. There was never no one actually having the conversation to make it better. And I found that to be very odd. And I was wondering, why is it that we embrace the things that make us the lesser than the things that can make us great? And that always stuck with me because I remember I made a video about this time. I was at my lowest point, and actually, because I was very depressed. And you're talking to somebody, you're listening to somebody that dealt with depression for almost damn near 25 years. But no matter what I faced, no matter what the disappointment was, no matter how it was being displayed in behavior, the one thing I can truly tell you, no matter how hard they ditched it out, I knew that I had something great planned for my life. And I knew the only way I could obtain that was being true to myself. And I knew that despite what the environment was, I've always had a big heart. I've always been a compassionate person. But it took me a long time to understand what the true price was, to understand temperance, and lastly, forgiveness. So let me fast track this. It is not ironic that when you look on social media, there is a great divide. There's a division amongst the genders, men, women. There is a division amongst the generations. And there's no responsibility because there is a indirect lack for the impact that it has on the generations that will come after us. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not a saint. I've made decisions that weren't in my best interest, not because of choice, but because I lacked the information that I needed to make sound decisions. But what you're not going to get is me to play the victim card. Because by doing so, you are basically saying your life doesn't matter. All right, sorry about that. Shut my garage down a little bit. But here's my point. My question to you is this. You realize all the time you invest in turning on social media, may it be for entertainment purposes, but why is it that entertainment, no matter what the form, it doesn't enhance or support the best you? Why is it the society is afraid to have the discussions? I'll do you better. I'll do you one better. You know why there's so much division? And people turn to social media as a false therapist? First and foremost, if you got some traumas that have more or less been lingering in your life, the only way you are going to have the life that you need, not what the one you want, the one you need, you got to acknowledge it exists. I'll do you one better, because I'm going to give credit where credit is. I remember when I heard Robert Glasper's Black Radio album. By the way, he was just here on over the weekend. Well, it actually was Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. I caught his last show. So I was very, very happy to see him perform live. But on the Black Radio album, there was a snippet that Pastor T.D. Jakes did a soundbite. And one thing he said, which was very, very monumental, he said, people that walk around, and I'm paraphrasing, that walk around with a broken heart will never have the ability to heal it until they actually acknowledge it's broken. And those words stuck with me. Now, mind you, the whole reason why I came on YouTube was reactionary because of a relationship that had failed. But I love myself unconditionally, that I was determined to change my narrative. You're looking at somebody that, you always hear people say, well, How are you going to speak on something you don't have any experience? And that's a big problem, because you have people that don't want to speak on topics that have no experience, no life experience. You haven't lived long enough to understand that you can come through it. And what happens is, a lot of people, they get to a point because their environment is non-supporting, they give up. They decide to say, well, you know what? Life is not worth living. And unfortunately, to make the ultimate sacrifice, because it is, because the greatest gift you'll ever possess is your life. That's for somebody. But there's a responsibility to have it. That's for somebody. That's why when you run into people that you might know, and I'm going to echo this again, this for somebody. Because there are plenty of people that got spiritual roots in their system and they're broken. Their spirit is toxic. And all they want to do is literally attract the sound, the voice of reason of the ear, with the intent to make them the same. And I'm here to tell you, pain, fear is temporary. And I know somebody's going to be like, what do you mean by that, Gerald? You don't understand. I went through an abusive relationship. Or I went through a period of abandonment. I went through a period of lack. I went through a period of loss. First and foremost, and I say this with love, a lot of that happens is because you're not aware. A lot of that occurs because your environment, first of all, you manifest your environment. Starts here. We only use 6% of our beautiful brain. But if you are not prepared, you can be easily misguided. Easily misled. Or in today's society, you know that is influenced. Hold that thought.